Ghosts in Green, a Raptors Chapter tale set during the Badab Uprising. The storm had no thunder. It was an old kind of weather, cold, patient, and intent on making the world disappear. Rain slid across rockcrete in silver sheets and pooled in shell craters that had once been parade squares. Wind worried at torn banners and the skeletal ribs of hab blocks. Somewhere out in the dark, a warning klaxon tried to rise, failed, and died in a cough of failing power. Brother-Sergeant Lysaen lay prone on a roof of broken slate and ferrocrete, his armor pressed into grit that tasted of ash and promethium even through the filters. The world beyond his visor was a mosaic of muted color, ghost greens and soot blacks, thermal signatures mapped in pale lines, range and wind data crawling across the lower edge of his sight. Raptor's plate did not gleam. It drank light. His Mark 7 armor, patched, repainted and deliberately unadorned, wore a pattern of drab greens and grey-browns that broke up the bulk of a space marine into the shapes of rubble and wet stone. Chapter badge. A simple raptor head, subdued, the white dulled to bone. Honor markings, if any, were beneath the pauldrons, on the inside of a vambrace, on a place only a brother would see. Nothing that shouted, nothing that begged an enemy's sight. Lysaen's bolt gun rested on the lip of the roof, muzzle shrouded in a rain-slicked cloth wrap to keep out grit and to soften the outline. He did not breathe loudly. He did not move unnecessarily. His voice was a thread across the squad's encrypted voxnet. "Hold," he murmured. Below him sprawled Bastion Hrax, a loyalist fortification once, now a secessionist strongpoint held by the Astral Claw's auxiliary forces. It sat astride the only viable road through the valley, a hard knot of gun emplacements and sensor masts and stacked hab modules welded into a crude fortress. Its outer wall was patched with scrap, its parapets bristling with heavy stubbers and autocannons, its searchlights sweeping methodically through the rain. The fortress looked like it had been built by someone who expected to fight the Imperial Guard, not by someone who understood how the Raptors hunted. A green rune pulsed in Lysaen's peripheral. Brother Cale had eyes on the sensor mast. Another rune. Brother Damas, right flank, moving. Another. Brother Venn, below and left, steady as stone. And farther back, out in the collapsed shell of a manufactorum, Brother-Sergeant Sirok, the squad's Techmarine, waited among chapter serfs and a single attached Navy Vox officer, their human heat signatures tightly clustered in the cold. The Raptors did not go to war alone. They brought the right tools, the right hands, the right people to make a mission succeed. Tonight, success meant something unglamorous. A data core, a sealed cogitator stack, and the coded traffic that would tell the loyalists which ships were being fed supplies and which ports the tyrant's allies were using. The Badab Uprising was a war of logistics as much as bolters. A fortress could be taken with blood. A war could be won by starving it. 2 minutes, came Cale's whisper. His voice was calm, slightly roughened by the half-swallowed prayer he never quite let slip. Wind's shifting. Searchlights have a blind arc at 12 degrees east of the mast. Lysaen watched the sweep. He saw it, a gap where light fell short, where the rain thickened and turned to a curtain. "Noted," Lysaen said. "No one moves until I say." He did not say for the Emperor. He did not need to. His brothers knew. A faint click over Vox. Damas confirming a position. Then a smaller sound. A human, trying not to breathe too quickly. Sirok's voice came, low, clipped, respectful. "Sergeant, Auspec's ghosting device is primed. It will buy us 47 seconds on their general grid when I trigger. After that, their machine spirits will scream. 47 seconds is a lifetime, Lysaen replied. Hold the trigger until you hear my mark. He let his gaze drift to the fortress proper, to the central tower where the cogitator stacks would be. A red light blinked near the upper levels. A comms relay. A secessionist's lifeline. Somewhere in that tower, a man had made choices. Somewhere behind those walls, men had decided to point their guns at other imperial citizens and call it justice. Somewhere, an astral claw officer had decided the Imperium was wrong and that Huron's word was law. Lysaen did not hate them. Hate was loud. Hate made mistakes. He hunted. Check your seals, he voxed. Confirmation runes ticked green across his display. He pictured them as he spoke, each one a living weapon and a distinct soul. Brother Cale, lean for an Astartes, his movements economical, his eyes too observant to ever truly rest. He carried a long-barreled bolter with a magnocular sight and special-issue bolts in a chest rig that had been worn and reworn until the leather was soft. Cale spoke seldom. When he did, it mattered. Brother Damas, broader, with a scar across the lower edge of his jaw where a chain blade had once kissed flesh. He favored the combat knife, and the way he held still was predatory, like something crouched in tall grass. Brother Venn. Quiet humor, the kind that never quite reached his voice. He carried the breaching charges and the compact melter cutter, and he had a gift for turning obstacles into doorways. Venn liked the human troops. He always learned their names. He always remembered them. Sirok. Half of his face hidden by the iron and red of the Mechanicus, his voice a measured cadence. To the Raptors, a Techmarine was not a priest in a separate church. He was a brother who spoke to machines the way others spoke to flesh. Sirok's servo arm remained folded close tonight, its silhouette kept tight to avoid catching light. And, with them, humans. 2 chapter serfs in void-black raincloaks, carrying inert equipment cases, and Petty Officer Rule, the Navy Voxman, whose hands shook even as he did his work. Ral had insisted on coming. He had been told no. He had argued until his throat was raw. Finally, Sirok had looked at him and said, "If you come to die quietly." Ral had paled. Then he had nodded. Lysaen respected that kind of fear. Fear faced and mastered. He watched the searchlights complete another sweep. He looked at the rain, at the wet darkness, at the blind arc Cale had marked. And he spoke a single word. "Move." The squad flowed. Not charging, not clanking, not roaring. Astartes' armor could be loud if worn loudly. Raptors wore it like a second skin, their greaves placed with care, their weight distributed, their joints maintained to a purr. Even in the rain, even over shattered stone, they moved as shadows move, visible only when you were already too late. Lysaen slid from the roof, dropping into the void of a stairwell whose walls had been peeled away by shellfire. He landed in a crouch that would have shattered a man's legs and rose without a sound, bolter held close. Ahead of him, Damas was already gone, a flicker between ruined archways. They crossed the open kill zone in the searchlight's blind arc, as if it had been built for them. Above, Cale remained, watching, feeding them a constant stream of minute corrections. Light shift in 5, 4, 3. The white beam scraped across the rubble where Venn had been a moment earlier and found only rain. Now, Cale breathed. They moved again. At the outer wall, they found welded scrap plating, jagged and layered, a hurried defense. It was man-high and topped with rusted wire. Guardsmen in patched armor walked the parapet, heads down against the rain. No astral claws in sight, just auxiliaries, mortal men with heavy guns and loyalty bought with promises. "Mark," Lysaen voxed. Sirok triggered the ghosting device. For a heartbeat, the world felt as if it held its breath. Lysaen's auto-sensors fluttered, tiny errors cascading across the edge of his vision. His armor's machine spirit bristled, then settled under Sirok's careful, calming rites. The fortress's sensor grid, by contrast, hiccuped. All specs arrays stuttered. Motion trackers blinked uncertainly. The comms relay light on the tower flickered. The fortress did not go blind. It hesitated. 47 seconds, Sirok said. "Now, Sergeant." Venn was already at the wall, his melter cutter pressed to the welded plates. The tool whispered, not roared. Heat contained, directed. Metal sagged, glowing faintly even in the rain. Venn guided the cut in a neat oval, catching the falling section before it could clatter. He eased the plate inward like a hatch. Damas slipped through first, disappearing into the gap. Lysaen followed, then Venn, then the humans with Sirok at the rear. The serfs moved like men trained to survive space marines. Quick, obedient, silent. Inside the wall, the courtyard was a maze of stacked containers, fuel drums, and gutted vehicles. Floodlights cast hard pools of light that turned the rain into knives. Between them lay shadow. A pair of sentries huddled under an overhang, smoking low sticks and speaking in low voices, their rifles slung. They did not see Damas. He rose behind them like a nightmare-given form. Matte green plate, a raptor head helm with lenses like dull emerald. His knife was in one man's throat before the man understood he was dying. The second turned, mouth opening. Damas's gauntlet clamped over his face. The man's shout became a wet, muffled gasp. The knife flashed once more. Damas eased both bodies down, laid them beneath the overhang, and pulled a tarp half over them, as if hiding them from the rain. He looked up at Lysaen and gave a small, economical nod. No triumph. No gloating. Just work. They advanced, hugging shadow, moving between containers. "Signal's unstable," Ral whispered over the vox, voice thin. I'm seeing spikes. If their relay comes back..." "It will," Sirok said, not unkind, merely factual. "So we will be gone before it matters." They reached the base of the central tower. The tower was not a proud thing. It was a repurposed administratum spire, once a symbol of imperial order. Now its aquila had been hacked away, replaced by a crude secessionist sigil, a clawed star, painted in wet red that ran in the rain like blood. A door at the base was guarded by 2 more men and a heavy stubber in a sandbagged nest. One guard was dozing, head bobbing. The other stared out into the rain, bored, eyes half-lidded. Lysaen's bolter rose. He did not fire. Venn touched his shoulder and gestured, left. Damas melted into the darkness to flank. Cale, above, sent a whisper. Thermal signature on second-floor window. 1 man. Possibly a watcher. Lysaen breathed once. Steady. He tapped a rune. Carl fired. The shot was a small sound, lost in rain. From the roofline far behind, the longbolt flew and punched through the second-floor window, detonating inside a skull. The watcher never fell into view. He simply stopped existing. At the door, Damas moved. 1 step, 2, then a lunge. His blade took the standing guard under the ribs, angled up through the heart. The man's eyes widened in surprise. He tried to speak. Blood frothed. Damas lowered him gently. The dozing guard lifted his head. Lysaen was there, fist closing on the man's collar. He hauled him forward, muffling the gasp, and drove his combat blade up beneath the chin and into the brainstem. He held the body until the last reflex ceased. Then he laid it down. Venn slipped past the stubber nest and placed a small device on the weapon's receiver, a magnetic clamp with a blessed spike. The stubber's feed jammed quietly. It would not fire when needed. Sirok knelt by the door's lock, mechadendrite flicking out. "Primitive," he murmured. "Offended machine spirit. I will soothe it." The door clicked. They entered the tower. Inside, the air was stale and damp, heavy with mold and old incense. Someone had tried to keep the place holy once, long ago. Now the walls bore graffiti and secessionist slogans. Badab free, tyrant protects, down with tithes. Lysaen's helm lenses adjusted, darkness sharpened. He saw every drip of water, every flake of paint, every scuff mark on stairs. He lifted 2 fingers. Stack. Damas took point, knife out, bolt pistol held close. Lysaen behind him, bolter ready. Venn with the breaching kit. Sirok at the rear with the humans. They climbed. On the first landing, they found a small shrine, an emperor icon cracked and daubed with red. Someone had hung dog tags from its neck like a mockery of rosaries. Venn's jaw tightened. Not anger. A note of it. Controlled. Lysaen touched the shrine briefly with his fingertips, an old habit, not ceremony, but acknowledgement. Then they moved on. Second floor, a corridor with doors on either side. Faint voices behind one. Laughter. Damas paused, listening. 2 men, he voxed. Cards. They're facing away. Lysaen slid to the door, pressed his helm to the crack. A room. 2 auxiliaries at a table. A lumen globe swinging overhead. Their rifles leaned against a wall. One of them said, "Heard the claws had taken the port tomorrow. Loyalist dogs will be—" He never finished. Damas entered like a shadow unhooked from reality. Knife, one throat. Then the other man tried to stand and found Lysaen's bolter pressed to his sternum. Lysaen did not fire. He simply pushed. The bolt gun's mass drove the man back into his chair. Lysaen's knife took him under the ribs and up. The man's hands scrabbled uselessly at ceramite. Then he sagged. In the room, Cale's earlier shot lay revealed. A body slumped beneath the shattered window, head gone, gore black in the rainlight. Ral swallowed audibly over the vox. Sirok's voice was a quiet metronome. Continue. They moved deeper. 3rd floor. The air grew warmer, hum of machinery. The cogitator stacks were close. Lysaen's visor flashed a warning rune, Auspex activity rising outside. The ghosting device's effect was fading. "We're on the clock," he voxed. 30 seconds before their grid stabilizes, Sirok replied. Lysaen's reply was immediate. "We only need 10. They reached a reinforced door marked with faded Mechanicus glyphs. Once, this had been a secure data vault. Now it bore a crude secessionist seal stamped over the lock. Venn set his melter cutter, whispering the tool's activation prayer, the way the chapter had taught him. Not ornate, not florid, just correct. Metal softened. The door parted. Inside, a chamber of tall cogitator stacks, their indicator lights blinking in steady patterns. Cable bundles ran like vines across the ceiling. Incense burned in a cracked censer, its smoke stale. And there, seated at a terminal with a data slate, was an astral claw. Not in full battleplate, in a stripped-down harness and greaves, helm off, bare head glistening with sweat in the warmth. His face was pale and hard, eyes focused, a space marine. Loyalty once, twisted now. Lysaen felt the room tighten, the claw's head lifted, his eyes widened fractionally. He reached for a bolt pistol on the desk. Damas moved first, too fast for a human eye. He threw his knife. It struck the astral claw through the wrist and pinned his hand to the desk. The claw snarled, rising, overturning the chair with a crash. That crash was loud, a sound the fortress could hear. "Contact!" Lysaen voxed. He fired. His bolt gun barked twice. The explosive rounds hit center mass, detonating in meat and bone. The astral claw staggered, armor harness shredding, then crashed into a cogitator stack hard enough to make lights flicker. He tried to stand again. Gene-forged resilience, stubbornness, will. Damas was on him. Damas's knife, his second blade, slid up beneath the claw's jaw and into the brain. The secessionist, Astartes, died without a word. Silence returned, but it was a fragile thing now. Outside the vault, somewhere below, Lysaen heard voices rise, boots on stairs. "They know," Cale voxed from Overwatch. "They heard that. Movement on parapets. Searchlights changing pattern." "Ral," Lysaen said. "Get your splice." Ral's hands shook in his voice. "On it. Emperor, on it." The Navy Voxman moved to a secondary terminal as Sirok guided him, mechadendrite, plugging in an adapter blessed with the chapter's own sigils. Ral's job was simple and impossible. Copy-coded traffic, extract destination ciphers, and leave behind nothing that would show exactly what was taken. Sirok murmured Binharic prayers under his breath, calming the cogitators, coaxing the data into the adapter's memory crystal. Venn planted a charge on the primary stack's coolant line. "If we need to burn it," he voxed, "it'll go quiet. No big blast." "Hold," Lysaen said. Boots on stairs, closer. Lysaen took position at the vault door, bolter raised, and looked at Damas. Damas nodded once and melted into shadow beside the corridor, ready to ambush. Cale's voice came steady as ever. "Sergeant, I count 8 auxiliaries on the 3rd floor stairwell, 1 heavy stubber on the landing below. No Astartes." Lysaen's mind ticked through options like a cogitator. Engage, withdraw, delay, deceive. The Raptors were not cowards. They were practical. "Damas," he voxed softly. "Let the first 2 pass. Take the 3rd. Silent. Understood." The footsteps reached the 2nd floor landing. Men muttered, nervous. "Heard something up there." "Probably rats." "No, that was a gun." "Quiet, you—" They began climbing again. The first 2 reached the corridor outside the vault, scanning, rifles up. They did not see Damas pressed flat to the wall, camo pattern blending with damp paint and darkness. They stepped past. The 3rd man came. Damas' knife rose and fell. One precise cut. A hand clamped over a mouth. A body eased down. The 4th man stopped short, sensing movement. "What?" Lysaen fired once. The bolt hit the man in the chest and exploded, turning him into a wet ruin. The sound was a hammer blow. Shouts erupted instantly. The heavy stubber below roared to life, then coughed and jammed. Venn sabotage biting. Men shouted again, panic sharpening their voices. "Up there! Up there!" Las fire flashed up the stairwell, wild and bright. Lysaen's bolter spoke in measured bursts. Each shot placed. Each detonation a final punctuation. Auxiliaries fell in the stairwell, their bodies sliding on wet steps. Damas moved like a phantom through the corridor, killing in close quarters, dragging bodies back into shadow to keep the landing clear. "Ral!" Lysaen barked. "Status!" 10 seconds, Ral stammered. Almost. Sirok's voice was iron. "Hold your mind steady, human. Your fear is noise." Ral made a strangled sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. Then, "Done! Data captured!" "Move," Lysaen ordered. Venn slapped the coolant line charge into standby. Not yet. They flowed out of the vault, down the corridor. And then the tower shook. Not from their charges. From outside. Heavy weapon fire, a muffled explosion in the courtyard. Cale's voice snapped. "Sergeant, parapet at West Wall, just lit up. They're firing into the yard. They've got something big moving. Armor." Lysaen's heart did not change pace, but his mind sharpened further. "Say again, Kyle." "Tracked vehicle," Cale said. "Looks like an old Chimera hull with plating. Auxiliaries are towing it into position. Searchlights are sweeping the yard now. They're trying to box you in. A net closing." "Alternate extraction," Lysaen voxed. "Sirok, can you open an exterior maintenance hatch on this level?" Sirok was already moving, mechadendrite probing. "Yes, but it will be loud." "Louder than dying," Venn muttered. Sirok ignored the humor. "Here." He stopped at a wall panel, pried it open, and whispered a Binharich command. Ancient servos stirred. A hidden hatch, once used by Administratum maintenance crews, clicked. 3 seconds, Sirok warned. The hatch blew outward with a squeal of protesting metal. Cold rain knifed in. Beyond the hatch was a narrow exterior ledge wrapping the tower, a gutter-like maintenance path. A sheer drop beyond. Lysaen looked down, 30 meters to the courtyard, lit now by frantic searchlights. "Rappel!" he voxed. Venn produced line launchers, compact, practical devices. Raptors did not rely on heroism when a rope would do. They fired anchors up and out, lines biting into stonework above the hatch. Then they went. Damas first, sliding down the line like water. Lysaen next. Venn. Then the humans, Sirok guiding them. One serf nearly slipping before Sirok's servo arm snapped out and caught him with a soft clank, hauling him close to the wall. The courtyard below erupted with shouts as shapes were spotted. Lasfire spat upward. Shots sparked off ceramite. One bolt grazed Lysaen's shoulder guard, leaving a hot scar but not breaching. He hit the ground in a crouch, rolled once into shadow, and rose into a sprint. Damas was already moving, cutting toward a gap between containers. Searchlights caught them for a heartbeat. 4 Astartes, moving impossibly fast in rain, their camo plate breaking up their outlines. The humans were smaller shadows, dragged along by the wake of giants. The tracked vehicle in the yard, a chimera thing, its turret replaced with a heavy autocannon mount, swung, trying to draw a bead. Venn slapped his melter cutter into his hand and ran straight at it. "Venn!" Lysaen voxed. "Don't!" Venn's voice carried a smile you could hear. "Sergeant, it's in my way." He slid under a beam of light, reached the vehicle's flank, and pressed the cutter to its track housing. The tool whispered. The track links glowed, sagged, parted. The chimera thing lurched, grinding, its autocannon firing wild, chewing up containers and spraying sparks. Venn leapt away as the vehicle slewed into a fuel drum. Promethium ignited. Fire blossomed low and heavy, turning rain into steam. The yard became a boiling hell of light and shadow. Auxiliaries screamed. Lysaen used the chaos. "Cale," he voxed. "Get off that roof. Extract point Delta." "On the move," Cale replied, no hesitation. They sprinted through smoke and rain. They reached the breach in the wall where they'd entered and found it illuminated by searchlights. Men were converging on it from both sides, a dozen at least, rifles up, some with flamers. They were closing the trap. Lysaen's mind snapped to another option, the wall's north section, where stacked scrap made a crude ramp to the top. Risky, exposed, but possible. North, he voxed. Now. They changed direction without question. A flamer roared, sending a tongue of fire across the wet ground. It hissed and sputtered in the rain, but it was still fire. Damas charged the flamer operator head-on. The man saw him, eyes widening, and tried to swing the nozzle. Damas threw his knife again, a brutal, perfect arc. It took the man in the throat. The flamer dropped, still gushing fire, painting the rain with orange. Damas crashed into a second auxiliary and broke him with a single blow. Then the autocannon spoke again. Someone had managed to bring another heavy weapon to bear. Shells tore into the yard, kicking up fountains of wet concrete. One shell hit near the humans. Ral screamed, a high, raw sound, then cut off. Lysaen's head snapped toward him. Ral was down, blood spreading dark beneath him. His leg was not there, just ragged ruin and armor webbing. The Voxman's hands clutched the data crystal case to his chest, like a child clutching a toy. Sirok was on him instantly. Servo arm lifting debris, mechadendrite probing for a tourniquet point. Ral's eyes were huge, white showing all around the iris. Don't leave it, he gasped. Please, don't. You will be carried, Sirok said, voice flat but not cruel. You have done your function. That's all I... Ral's jaw clenched as another wave of pain hit. That's all I wanted. Lysaen felt something tighten behind his sternum. Not grief yet. The promise of it. Venn, he voxed. Can you carry him? Venn was already moving, scooping Ral up with one arm as if he weighed nothing. Got him! Ral made a broken sound that might have been thanks. They ran. The north wall ramp was a mess of scrap and broken masonry. Climbing it in armor was possible. Climbing it under fire was something else. Cale's voice came over Vox again, now closer. I'm at Delta. I have eyes on your route. You've got 15 men moving to intercept near the ramp. One has a launcher. Acknowledged, Lysaen said. He did not hesitate. He did not slow. He stepped into the open, drew fire to himself deliberately. Last bolt snapped off his armor. One struck his thigh, burning but not penetrating. He fired back in controlled bursts, bolts detonating in bodies, turning men into red mist in the rain. A heavy weapons trooper raised the launcher. Cale fired. The troopers had disappeared. They hit the ramp. Damas went first, climbing like a beast, hauling himself up with brutal efficiency. Lysaen followed, firing one-handed to keep heads down. Venn climbed with Ral slung across his shoulders, the Voxman moaning softly, his blood slick on Venn's armor. A serf slipped, boot skidding on wet metal. Sirok caught him by the collar with the servo arm and hauled him up without breaking stride. At the top of the wall, searchlights swept again, catching them for a second, and then a new sound. A roar that was not human. Lysaen's helm snapped toward it. On the parapet to the west, an astral claw had appeared. Full battle plate this time, helm on, clawed star on his pauldron painted bright. He carried a heavy weapon, something like a missile launcher, but modified, brutal. He moved with the certainty of a predator who had finally scented prey. He raised the weapon. Lysaen's mind ran cold. Too far for a knife. Too little time. Cale, he voxed. Take him. Cale's answer was immediate. Line of sight is broken. I can't. The astral claw fired. The projectile screamed across the rain-slick air. It struck the wall near Venn. The explosion was controlled, shaped, designed to breach armor. Venn vanished in smoke and fire. Lysaen felt the concussion even through ceramite. He tasted copper in his mouth. His auto senses flared warnings. When the smoke cleared, the ramp's edge was gone. So was Venn. Ral lay sprawled on the wall, the data case still clutched in his hands. He was not moving. Sirok stood over him, servo arm rigid, as if frozen mid-motion. Damas made a sound over Vox, just a single syllable cut off as he forced himself back into silence. Lysaen's vision narrowed. Not hatred, not rage, focus. The astral claw was reloading. Lysaen charged along the wall, boots thudding now, no longer caring about silence. Bolts slammed into the parapet near the claw. The secessionist Astartes ducked, armor shrugging off fragments. He looked up, and Cale appeared. Not from below, from above. Cale had climbed a skeletal comms mast in the rain and leapt, using the height to clear the gap in line of sight. He hit the astral claw like a meteor, driving him back from the parapet edge. Both space marines crashed into the wet stone, grappling. Cale's knife flashed. The astral claw caught his wrist, strength against strength, then drove a fist into Cale's helm hard enough to crack the lens. Cale's head snapped back. The claw tried to rise. Cale's other hand produced a grenade. He shoved it into the claw's chest harness and head-butted him once, savagely, to keep him there. Then Cale kicked off, rolling away. The grenade detonated. The astral claw's torso became a blossoming ruin of armor and flesh. Cale lay still for a heartbeat, then pushed himself up, one lens dark, rain running down his helm like tears. "Target down," he voxed, voice strained. "Sergeant, we need to leave." Lysaen went back to the ramp's edge. There was no Venn, no sign of him but scorched metal and fragments of green-painted ceramite lodged in the wall. Ral lay dead beside the gap, eyes open, still clutching the data case. Sirok knelt, lifted the case gently from Ral's stiff fingers, and closed the Voxman's eyes with a thumb. "His duty is complete," Sirok said. Damas's voice was low and dangerous. So was Venn's. Lysaen looked out over the yard below. Auxiliaries were swarming now. Searchlights stabbed everywhere. The fortress was awake, angry, loud. Somewhere in that chaos, the Raptors' mission had already succeeded. Data secured. Enemy Astartes killed. Exit still possible, but at a cost that sat heavy as wet stone. "Delta," Lysaen ordered softly. "Go." They ran along the wall, jumped down into the shadowed rubble beyond, and disappeared into the rain-choked ruins as the fortress's guns roared after ghosts. They reached extraction at the edge of the valley where an old drainage canal cut through rock and vanished into darkness. It was a place that swallowed sound, a place the locals avoided, a place the Raptors had chosen precisely because it felt like a grave. Cale stood watch at the canal mouth, one lens still dead, his helm slightly dented. Damas paced in a tight circle like a caged predator. Sirok knelt with the data case open, checking the integrity of the memory crystal, his mecha dendrites moving with delicate precision. Two serfs huddled under a broken culvert, shivering. Lysaen removed his helm. Rain struck his face cold. His skin was pale under the weak light. His eyes were tired, but not from the run, from the weight. He looked at the place where Venn should have been standing, making some dry comment about the rain, asking after the serfs by name, checking Rawl's condition with a gentleness that never quite fit his size. Instead, there was only absence. A Thunderhawk's engines growled low overhead, still distant, still masked by terrain, the pilot keeping to strict approach vectors to avoid detection. Sirok stood, turning toward Lysaen. "Data is intact. It contains convoy schedules, port allocations, and encrypted Vox traffic. Enough to map the secessionists' supply arteries for this theatre. Lysaen nodded. Good. That was all he said. Damas stopped pacing. Sergeant. What? Damas's jaw clenched. The scar along it looked darker in the wet. We leave him. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation against reality itself. Lysaen met his gaze. We cannot recover him. We could go back, Damas said, voice low. We could die, Lysaen replied, equally low. We could compromise the data. We could lead them to our allies. We could lose more than one brother to soothe a wound. Damas's fists tightened. His knuckles creaked inside ceramite. Cale's voice came, strained but steady. Venn knew the risk. He'd tell you to stop wasting breath. Damas turned his head slightly, as if that had struck him. Don't speak for him. Cale's remaining lens fixed on Damas. Then don't dishonor him by pretending he didn't choose. Silence. Rain. The distant, growing thunder of the Thunderhawk's approach. Sirok stepped closer to Lysaen and held out the data case. We will deliver this. His sacrifice will purchase loyalist lives. Lysaen took the case. His fingers closed around it, and for a moment he imagined Ral's hands there, shaking but determined. He imagined Venn's grip, steady, trusting. He closed his eyes briefly, then opened them. Transmit to command as soon as we are aboard, he said. Sirok nodded. Yes, Sergeant. The Thunderhawk dropped into view, an angular shadow against a darker sky, landing thrusters cutting rain into spirals. Its hull bore the Raptors' markings, muted and practical. Its ramp lowered with a hiss. Inside, red lumen strips cast everything in a blood-dim glow. Aboard, a chapter serf met them, face grim. He looked past them automatically, counting. Then he understood. His eyes flicked down. Brother Venn! Lysaen did not answer immediately. He stepped onto the ramp. Boots clanging now, the mission's silence finished. Behind him, Damas climbed aboard. Posture rigid. Cale followed, one lens dead, moving like a man who had paid in pain. Sirok entered last, carrying the weight of machines and the weight of names. Lysaen looked at the serf. Fallen, he said simply. The serf bowed his head once, sharply, like a man swallowing grief, because there wasn't time for it yet. Understood, my lord. Inside the Thunderhawk, as the ramp sealed and the engines rose, Lysaen finally let himself look at his brothers. He saw Damas's fury, kept on a chain. He saw Cale's exhaustion, wrapped around duty like armor. He saw Sirok's calm, a mask that did not hide the loss so much as catalogue it. He saw the humans, pale and shaking, alive because giants had moved through darkness on their behalf. Lysaen placed the data case in a mag-locked cradle and secured it. The click sounded loud in the confined hold. Listen, he said. They looked at him. We do not fight this war for glory, Lysaen continued. We fight it because the Imperium is built on 1,000,000 small loyalties, and this sector is bleeding them away. We cut the arteries tonight. We did what we came to do. Damas stared at the deck. Cale inclined his head. Sirok's servo arm flexed once, a small mechanical gesture. Lysaen's voice softened by a fraction. We will remember Venn. We will remember Ral. Not with statues, not with songs, with results. He tapped the data case once with 2 fingers. This is their memorial. The Thunderhawk lifted, engines howling, vanishing into cloud and rain. Behind them, bastion racks burned in patches, small fires, nothing dramatic, but enough to mark the night where ghosts had come and gone. And somewhere in the fortress, men would curse shadows and swear vengeance on enemies they could barely describe. They would tell stories about green demons that moved without sound. They would exaggerate. They would make it myth. The Raptors would not. For the Raptors, it had been a mission, a hard one, a costly one, a necessary one. And in the cold calculus of the Badab Uprising, that was what made it matter.